Hey, what's going on, Instagram Live family? This your boy, Brother Leon. I'm here for a moment. I'm not going to be, quote unquote, officially preaching this morning, but I wanted to come to you with a little something. Because the one thing that I want you to realize is this, and like I've said many times before, that the church has been given all types of revelation for a whole lot of things. Doctrine, revelation, theology. I am a proponent and a believer of Black liberation theology. I also believe in decolonizing your faith. And what that means is taking every aspect of white Jesus, white Europeanism, and colonialism out of your belief system. But I also believe in deconstructing. That means basically taking out those things that haven't served us and isn't working. Didn't work then, not working now. And so, I gave you an analogy last week. And so my question is this, and I'm going to just be blunt, like, hey, if the Spirit is speaking, and the Spirit speaks in church and tells people how to give, my question is, if the Holy Spirit is speaking to prophets and apostles and ministers, then my question is, why do we still have sex trafficking? Because you could very well use those prophetic gifts to let the cops know where the sex traffickers are, where the drugs are, where the drug houses are, who's the crooked cops. You could have a prophet stand in the hiring process and say, nah, he ain't the one. Nah, she ain't the one. But you're not going to get that. Because the crazy thing is that these gifts could be utilized to benefit the community, but they're not. You only have them utilized in church to prop up the church, to prop up specific members at times so that they can be utilized more in the church. But outside the church where you need it the most, nah. And this is the reason why I tell you that you have to begin to deconstruct your faith. What is faith? Belief without facts. And I know there are times that people have to begin to believe, but you have to have facts as a foundation for your faith. Faith works by love, but what are the facts? What are the facts that causes you to believe? We believe in this word of God wholeheartedly. Some people do. But they refuse to research Christianity or even look at the history of what has happened to us as Black Christians. And so there are a lot of people that are preaching the message of reconciliation. And the crazy thing about it is that reconciliation will never work. And here's the reason why. Apostle Fred Price said this. He said this during his whole thing when he was talking about racism, race, religion, and racism, when he did that whole series. And the crazy thing about it is that during that series, he exposed a lot of the hypocrisy and racism in the church. He exposed Kenneth Hagin Jr. He exposed him. He exposed the Dake's Bible. He exposed it. And the crazy thing about it is that his brethren and sisters in the faith movement, and even others outside of the movement wanted to take him off the air because they felt as though that he was causing division. And the one thing is, when you start to stand on truth, everybody that is upset with that truth will try their best to keep you silent. Because truth makes you free and it exposes lies. It exposes hypocrisy. So let's go in here. Apostle Fred Price said in the series on race, religion, and racism, you can't have reconciliation without recognition. The message of reconciliation is a good doctrine when you put it in the proper context. It is a good doctrine for Christians when they see themselves as equals. But Fred Price said this, about reconciliation, and this was his definition. He said reconciliation is, at one point, we were friends, and then we fell apart because of something, and now we're back friends again. We're back equal again. So reconciliation gives the aspect of you being equal at one point, but then you had a falling away, but then you came back together. So my question, in light of history, when have black people ever been equal with white people on an equal plane? When? If people want to say make America great again, when was a time that both parties, black and white, were equal? Because we had separate but equal laws, but when it came to certain things, there was no equal in it. The quality wasn't there. Seriously. Because if you're going to say separate but equal, then there needs to be equal quality as well. There wasn't when it came to black people in black spaces. Let's go back in here. The message of reconciliation is a good doctrine in the Christian church. However, it falls on deaf ears and is powerless when you try to convince people that the message of reconciliation is the answer to racism in the church. It's not. It will never be. And even though I love Tony Evans, he was wrong on that, trying to reconcile. I'm like, nah, man, we got to begin to tell the truth. And a lot of people don't want to hear the truth. The one thing that I say that I will agree with him on is the fact that he told the Republican Party that you have made the party an idol. But he also said, black people, you more black, you got more black in you than you got word in you. Something along those lines. I'm just paraphrasing, and allegedly he said these things. So the one thing that I want you to understand is this, is that as black people, we are always, when it comes to Christianity, you got to give up everything. But Jewish people don't have to give up nothing. If anything, they are required to remember. And they swear that it will never happen again. And that's the God knows truth. They tell themselves, we will never go through the Holocaust again. We will never be used, raped, and pillaged and exterminated ever like that again. And that's the God knows truth. And so at the end of the day, you got to begin to understand and realize is that we as black people have to begin to say, hey, nah, we ain't accepting that. Because how can you have reconciliation without recognition? They didn't recognize back then when they had them separate but equal spaces and laws that the quality wasn't there. The quality of life was never there. But yet back then, they thought that black people had it good, just like you still think that black people got it good today. But the crazy thing about it, and I was talking about this to a friend, I said, man, they will give us everything except legislation specifically for us. We could have had the George Floyd Policing Act. Didn't happen. But the Asians, they have an anti-Asian hate bill. But what we have Juneteenth. We have the right to put Black Lives Matter all over the street or whatever. We was given more food stamps. Everybody was given more food stamps. And most recently, we got the Black National Anthem at the Super Bowl. It's crazy. But the one thing that I want you guys to understand is this, is that at the end of the day, you got to realize that it's not enough. They'll give you anything and everything except legislation. And the one thing I'm going to say is this: diversity and diversity language can be utilized against black people. Because at the end of the day, it's pretty much like, hey, we can choose anybody except you. We can choose anybody. We don't have to choose a black person. We can choose any person of color, but yet when it comes to us, we're supposed to be satisfied with just diversity language. Diversity can mean white women. Diversity can mean handicapped white people. But yet they fall under diversity. And the crazy thing about it is that when you look at affirmative action, white people and white women especially benefited from affirmative action more than anyone. And yet, we as black people get the blame. We as black people are always told to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. But yet, they forget about everybody that was given a handout that came willingly on the ships over here to America, but they forget about the trauma and those who were forcibly put on ships and brought over here. One of the reasons why reconciliation will never work is that most white people believe that the aspect of a black person being equal to them, some of them can't fathom that. And so, yeah, we want you to have your stuff, but we don't want you to be on an equal playing field. I don't want you making the same type of money I make. I don't want you having job opportunities that I get. So, yeah, there were a lot of people that walked with Martin Luther King because they felt as though the blacks were supposed to have certain things, but not equal, not as good as some of their white counterparts. And one of the reasons why I believe that Martin Luther King was assassinated was due to the fact that he spoke about an equal playing field in the field of economics. When it came to money, when it came to opportunities, you're going to pay me the same rate that you pay that white man, and white people weren't having that. And this is one of the reasons why I believe that when you begin to look at the black church and when you begin to look at America specifically, that this is one of the reasons why he said, man, I might have integrated our people into a burning house. Because the crazy thing is, the one thing that we'll see about America is that they'll burn it all down before they allow themselves or allow anybody to be equal. And that's the God knows truth. So let's go in here. President Lyndon B. Johnson once said that if you convince the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you're picking his pockets. Hell, give him somebody to look down on and he'll empty his pockets for you. That is what Lyndon B. Johnson said. And the crazy thing about it is that it is still like that today. Seriously, it is still like that today. That if you can convince a poor white man that he is better than the best black man, oh man, please, that white man will fight for the rich white man. And that's what it is. You got these rich white guys convincing poor white guys that the black man or the Mexican man is their problem. And the crazy thing, they're not looking at the fact that, hey, that white man is robbing you. And he is the one that's looking back, observing, laughing while he's eating the pie. He got like 6 slices of pie and left one out there for me and you to fight over. And nobody sees this. This is the reason that boggles me, because how is it that you can convince white people to vote against their own interests, poor white people especially, to vote against their own interests? And what they put into law, like those tax laws, those tax breaks, poor white people ain't getting that. But yet you guys are going out here and supporting those who are robbing you. Because you rather get robbed by a white man than to have a black man or a black person be on an equal playing field. And the crazy thing about it, you saw this when Obamacare came up. Obamacare benefited a whole lot of poor whites in rural areas, but a lot of them voted against it because it was Obama. A lot of them voted against it because it was a black man. And a lot of people are mad because of all these immigrants coming over here and taking our jobs. My question to you, my friend, is this. Who was it that closed down the plant? Was it a black man? Was it a Mexican man? No, it was the white man. It was the white man that put your job overseas, that outsourced your job. It is the white man that comes and gets ununionized workers or scab workers, if you want to call them that, and he's the one that brings them in. You never get mad at him, but you get mad at the guy that's getting picked up. So I'm going to say like Chris Rock said, don't hate the player, hate the game. Because that's it. That is what it is. It is the game. It is the game to keep you broke. And this is the reason why reconciliation will never work. It falls on deaf ears because it doesn't recognize history. It glances right over it. And the crazy thing is that you will not have white people take and tell other white people about, yo, y'all wrong. The revivalists didn't do it. The apostles of today are not doing it. The prophets of today are not doing it, whether they be black or white. I don't care. They ain't doing it. Seriously. Dr. Hammond ain't doing that. Yeah, I said it. Kenneth Copeland is not doing that. The crazy thing about it, I came out of Word of Faith. You didn't hear nothing like this from Kenneth Hagin. You didn't hear it from Copeland. You didn't hear it from Dollar. The father of our faith was Smith Wigglesworth. He never mentioned it. And I came out of that and went into the prophetic. And everybody, I had somebody say, hey, yo, why don't you talk about William Seymour? You know what happened to William Seymour? White people happened to William Seymour. When you begin to look at the history of his life, whether it be Tim Story's documentary or whether it be Robert's Liardon documentary, that revival was jacked up because white people came and tore it up. When it came to his church, his mailing list got stolen by a white woman. And the crazy thing is that he ended up dying. Good move, good movement, good revival, headed by a black man. But as soon as white people showed up, that's how you got white Pentecostals and black Pentecostals. Because a white man felt as though, ooh, you wrong. William Parham, or if I'm saying his name right, Parham. Because they were a part of each other. And the crazy thing is that we have allowed racism into the church and it hasn't left. It isn't leaving. So you can have the doctrine and the revelation of grace. You can have the doctrine and the revelation of honor, of mercy, of love. But until you get the doctrine of reconciliation and put it with recognition, you'll never heal a people that has been broken. What black people need the most is reparations. But the crazy thing is that you'll never get reparation or reconciliation without recognition. Because we need to be repaired. We need to be restored. The Bible says that if the thief be found, he shall restore sevenfold. And the crazy thing is, it shouldn't have to be about a check. But if it is about a check, what about the money that you sent into Israel? Nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about the money sent to the Ukraine. Nobody wants to talk about the opportunities given to the immigrants that came over here after we left the Middle East. But yet you say we ain't got no money when you look at all these PPP loans. I look at it like this. You don't have to give black people a dollar amount, but give them $40,000, everybody, descendants of slaves, $40,000 toward a mortgage. $40,000 that the government is covering regardless of credit. I guarantee you they'll change the real estate laws real fast. Because that's what happens. But let's go back in here. The spirit behind those words, what Lyndon Johnson said, I'm going to say it again. If you can convince the lowest white man that he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you're picking his pockets. Hell, give him somebody to look down on and he'll empty his pockets for you. That is still out here today. And you see that when you have or you won't have, or you'll hardly ever see a fully white congregation following a black pastor. Very rarely will you see that. And even I'm gonna give you the game. Black people will follow a white pastor. Multicultural churches led by a white pastor, they'll do that. But very rarely will you get an all-white congregation following a black pastor. It ain't going to work. It ain't going to work because of that. Because people will feel as though that I'm better than. That man might be preaching all types of stuff that's beneficial. But there will be somebody that believes that they're better than, and that's because of a person's pride. That's because of that white pride. That's why Lyndon Johnson was able to say it, because he understood. He understood it. What is reconciliation? The act of causing two people or groups to become friendly again after an argument or disagreement. So my question is this. When were black people and white people ever friends? Were white people friends with black people on August the 20th, 1619 in Jamestown, Virginia? Were they? No. You can't reconcile trauma. You can't reconcile rape. You can't reconcile kidnapping and theft. You can't reconcile post-traumatic slave syndrome. You can't reconcile that. And here's post-traumatic slave syndrome by Dr. DeGraw. And it was developed her theory on post-traumatic slave syndrome, publishing her findings in the book Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, America's Legacy of Enduring Injury and Healing. The book addresses the residual impacts of generations of slavery and opens up the discussion on how the black community can use strengths we have developed in the past to heal the present. What is post-traumatic slave syndrome, or PTSS? PTSS is a theory that explains the etiology of many of the adaptive survival behaviors in African American communities throughout the United States and the diaspora. It is a condition that exists as a consequence of multi-generational oppression of Africans and their descendants, resulting from centuries of chattel slavery, a form of slavery which was predicated on the belief that African Americans were inherently genetically inferior to whites. This was then followed by institutionalized racism, which continues to perpetuate injury, thus resulting in MAP. What is MAP? MAP, multi-generational trauma together with continued oppression. A, absence of opportunity to heal or access the benefits available in society, leading to P, post-traumatic slave syndrome. And so the one thing that I'm going to tell you is this. You can't reconcile a friendly relationship that never existed. And that's the God knows truth. You can't reconcile it. Because at the end of the day, we were never friends. We were never friends when you kidnap me from my home and bring me to yours. That's not friends. I didn't call you up and say, hey, John, let me come over and work for you for over 400 years. And then you not even pay me, but yet you kill me, you rape my wife and daughters, you kill my sons, you kidnap us, you throw us and space us all over the place. But yet that's supposed to be reconciliation. That's friendship. The Bible says, to much has been given, much is required. So you believe that because you have an edge on God, or that God is giving you revelation and theology and doctrine to give to the Africans, that you're not required to repair them, that you're not required to reconcile or to restore, because you were a thief. Not only did you steal the bodies, but you stole the minds, the inventions, the money, everything. But yet nobody wants to talk about this in church. The prophets ain't going to do it. The apostles are not going to do it. I'm serious. Nobody is taking up Fred Price's torch. Not in that area. Maybe every other area, but not that one. Because it's not good for business. It's not good for bringing money into the church. Because most men and women of God, they need that money to come through. And if you start preaching on racism and the effects of it, no, people ain't going to want to hear that. Your collection is going to dry up and they're going to try to get you off of TV or try to say that you're being anti-Semitic. That's what they'll do. You can't reconcile a bloody history with the love of Christ and the Bible. The Bible is pro-slavery in both Old and New Testaments. You can't Jesus away this. Man, please. How is it that God can give you a law talking about don't eat shellfish, but give you a law saying, hey, you can beat a slave to an inch of their life and it's cool? I'm paraphrasing. And the problem that I have with most Christians is that they try to explain away slavery as if it was a social service. Seriously, when you talk about slavery in the Bible, they act like it was a social service. But my question is, as Christians, how can you be okay with bondage? To my Hebrew Israelite brothers, how is it that you can be okay with bondage? How is it that you can believe that when Christ comes back, he's going to set up the same system that oppressed us? And my question is this: if God is coming back and there will be no need for the sun or no need for the moon and the stars because the glory of the Lord is going to permeate the whole place, then my question is, why would we need slaves? For what? If we're supposed to be, when we get to heaven, worshiping God. So the crazy thing is that you have been deceived, my brothers, to believe that this is what's going to happen when Christ returns. And that's the God knows truth. And the one thing that I want you guys to understand is this, is that we have all been deceived. I was deceived in thinking that, I need to focus on the word. I don't need to focus on who I am as a black man. I need to focus on the word. The word makes me who I am. Until I started seeing the contradictions, until I started looking at the history behind Christianity, until I started to see and couldn't remain silent when some of the people that I followed, like Kenneth Copeland, started sporting his belief. I'm like, man. And the crazy thing is that we as black people, man, we follow these men. How many black people went to Rhema? How many white people went to Liberty even after the fact found out that Jerry Falwell was racist? Still going to Liberty University. And the crazy thing about it, man, is that even when you see it, you still act like it ain't there. Seriously, you still act like it ain't there even with Franklin Graham. You still act like it ain't there even with President Trump. You act like it ain't there even with Paula White, even with Rod Parsley. And these are the people that preach, that take our black preaching style. But yet when it comes to, stuff that's supposed to help our community, they stand with people that stands against our community, such as President Trump. But they stood with him. They stood with the Republicans. And I'm going to tell you this, the Democrats are just as guilty as well, because they'll go to your church and you still won't get legislation. They'll give you a photo op, but they won't tell you the truth, such as VP Harris saying America is not a racist country. America has always been a racist country. America is a racist nation, a bloody nation, and a godless nation. Yeah, I said it. And the reason why I say it is because you uphold a book that is pro-slavery. I'm going to give you this. Exodus 21:20 out of the CSB, the Christian Standard Bible, or the Holman Standard Bible. When a man strikes his male or female slave with a rod and the slave dies under his abuse, the owner must be punished. However, if the slave can stand up after a day or two, the owner should not be punished because he is his owner's property. New Testament. Ephesians chapter 6, verses 5 to 9 out of the CSB. Slaves, obey your human masters with fear and trembling in sincerity of your heart, as you would Christ. Don't work only while being watched as people pleasers, but as slaves of Christ, doing God's will from your heart. Serve with a good attitude as to the Lord and not to people, knowing that whatever good each one does, slave or free, he will receive this back from the Lord. And masters, treat your slaves the same way without threatening them, because you know that both their master and yours is in heaven, and there is no favoritism with him. That is a lie. That is a bald-faced lie. Paul lied, God lied, because when you look at this, if that was the case, then the situation in Philemon would have never happened. Why did that slave run away? And the question I tell people is that, why is it that Paul couldn't let that man keep running? Why did he talk him into going back to his slave master? Do you believe that they were on equal terms? Nah. Because we've been fed a lie that if you just take and serve, that you're going to get yours when God comes. How long we been waiting on God? How long we been waiting on the rapture? How long we been waiting on Jesus? I'm going to tell you right now, Paul is the biggest detriment, the biggest lie, the biggest weapon that has been used against black people when it comes to this. Because you will sit up here and you will serve in church, hyper vigilant, and you ain't going nowhere. You being created to be a slave master and an overseer to a system that was never designed for you. And the crazy thing about it is that people say, well, yeah, Christianity started in Ethiopia. Where is Ethiopia? Is all of Africa free? No, it's not. If anything, they learned how to manipulate people and use people, because the image of white Jesus, if you put a man in Africa today and dress him up like Jesus, if Jim Caviezel dressed up as Jesus and went to Africa, I guarantee you people will follow him thinking that he's Jesus. Because we have gotten that image in our mind that Christ looks like Jim Caviezel, that he's the pictures and the portraits that we have seen. And until we are able to get that out of our psyche and out of our mind, we will always be in chains. Because the slave master made himself into the image of God for you because he forced it on you. And my question is this: if it was forced upon you, can you trust it to save your soul? If it was forced upon these black Africans to turn Christian, do you trust it to save their soul? Seriously, do you trust it? Last scripture, 1 Peter 2:18 out of the CSB. Household slaves, submit to your masters with all reverence, not only to the good and to the gentle ones, but also to the cruel. So it's saying submit. The key word is obey, submit. And wherever you look in the Bible, you will always see slaves. My question to my dear black Christian brethren, are you okay? My question to my Christian brethren, my black Christian brethren, are you okay with the bondage? Because the crazy thing about it, it's clearly here. So the Old Testament writings, the New Testament writings, there's no getting around it. So I'm going to tell you right now, this system was not created for us because they gave us a slave Bible with those passages. And you were given a slave preacher because you felt as though, hey, he looks like us, so he's telling the truth. No, he was taught by his master to give you his master's words. And that is what is happening today when they give you reconciliation without recognition. When they give you, recognition only recognize I have a dream speech, but never the part about Martin Luther King where he said, hey, we coming to get our check. Recognize, all of the good of black culture, but never the pain. So my question is that when were we ever equal? We were never equal. If we were equal, I'm going to tell you right now, the AME would never existed. But when you look at denominations, you have black Pentecostals, white Pentecostals. You have the AME. You have black Catholics as well as white Catholics. And so this is what is happening. And I'm going to tell you, man, we're comfortable with it. So I'm going to tell you right now, man, reconciliation falls on deaf ears in light of black history. And that's the God knows truth. You can't reconcile trauma, especially when you're called to reconcile trauma with a people and with a group that traumatize you. How can you heal with people that traumatize you? The best that they can do, the best that they can do is repair, restore, reparations. That's the best. But they don't want to give you that because they felt as though, well, you benefited from it as well. I'm serious. They get ready to teach that in Florida, that there were benefits to slavery. The crazy thing about it is that we as black people have believed it. So I'm telling you right now, man, wake up and understand this. Like Fred Price said, there will never be reconciliation without recognition. You can't have reparations or restoration without recognition. If you don't recognize that we were injured and you can't recognize that you were the one that did the injuring, there is no reconciliation because we were never friends. There's never going to be repair because you feel like that you weren't wrong. I'm waiting for somebody to at least give us an apology. You ain't going to get that. So, hey, have a blessed day.